Well, first of all, hopefully I don't blow the speaker out here. A huge thank you to you all for coming out and honoring so many things here. A small part of it is me honoring Henry. We heard a lot of words about him and just East Beach. So thank you. I'm deeply touched to have a crowd of this size to come to honor Santa Barbara volleyball, or one of Santa Barbara's. Two things come to mind for me, and number one, we're nothing without our memories. If I lose my memory, I'm not me anymore. And so I have so many special memories here, and I'll just recount a few of them. As my dad Laz said, the courts used to be, in the 50s and 60s, more centered around the bathhouse. And so we still have some old film, but my first volleyball memory was that on weekends, because we were here, my dad was in his internship year of medicine and worked really hard during the week, 80 to 100-hour work weeks, and then our time together as a family with my mom Tony, my dad Laz, and I, would be to come down here, and he'd get some games in, and then we'd bop the ball back and forth. And at first it was, could we keep it going 3 times? And then it was 6 times and 10. And just the challenge was to try to keep it going longer and longer. I'm impressed now that he had any energy to play with me between his games, because he expended so much energy with the yelling and the screaming and the chasing. Karch, rise and think, hit that ball! He had all the great dialogue, and I loved it once I got to play with him. But that's my first memory of East Beach. 6 years old, down there playing a little just pepper back and forth. Another great memory I have is 3 years later, at age 9, I got to play on a court. For all I know, I don't know, I think it was one of these 2 courts. Maybe you know better than I, but the very first game on a court that I ever played was 2 on 2, as we play on the beach so often. And I got to play with the mayor of East Beach at that time, Bill Conway, Seaway. And he was the reigning mayor, and he would organize all the card games. He'd decide who played where, who got the challenge. And of course, my dad was nice enough to let me play with the best player on the court, and that was age 9, first time. Fantastic memory to be able to play on this court. I consider myself really lucky to get to have been able to grow up at a time when there were no video games. Those are a particularly hypnotic attraction to young boys. It certainly would have been to me. I'm lucky that it wasn't around, so that John and I just wanted to be here or break into any gym we could in Santa Barbara to play this game. We were hooked on something that I could think of a lot worse things to be hooked on than volleyball. I was lucky to grow up at a time when there was no club volleyball. So that first game I played was with adults, not with kids who were trying to learn the game themselves. That turned out to be a huge advantage for me in my career, that from age 9 on, I got to see it how it was supposed to look, how it was supposed to be done. So that helped me model, because I had all these great visual models on how to play the game, and also how to see people across the net who were trying to hide what they wanted to do, so I could learn better how to read their intentions. And it all started at age 9, maybe right here on this court. A couple of years later, there was a great, one of the all-time greats who played with Henry quite a bit, Larry Rundle, had a rare feature in Sports Illustrated, and it talked about how he had set the record of being the youngest player ever to play in an adult tournament on the California circuit at age 11, so we decided to match that. So we played, Laz and I played in our first tournament at Corona Del Mar at age 11. We lost 2 straight. Both the games were by 2 points, and it was incredible to see the look of fear on grown men across the net who were doing anything they could not to lose to a punk, skinny 11-year-old kid. And it was just awe-inspiring to have that kind of power at an early age. Another memory I have, Henry's come up here. is, or come up in our discussion, is Henry was one of those relentless guys too, and one of the reasons he was one of the all-time great beach volleyball players is because in the afternoons here, sometimes we in Santa Barbara get a little spoiled. We got this in the morning, sometimes the wind comes up in the afternoons. And maybe I'll play a little cards, I'll wait till it calms down a little bit. He wasn't like that, so he'd be the only one. And I distinctly remember he'd start down at one end. He'd throw the ball to himself. I got to see him hit more then than during a tournament because nobody'd ever give him a chance to hit in the tournament. He'd throw the ball to himself, crush it straight down. It would roll down to the next court. He'd sprint after it, do it again. He worked his way all the way down, all the way back, all the way down, all the way back. Hours of this. And that was where some of his endurance came from, and where some of me, again, learning by osmosis, getting to see, whoa, so that's what it takes to be good at this, is that when nobody else wants to play, you're going to do it. You're going to get it. You're going to figure out a way with one ball and one person to get it done. And he did. And that's an indelible memory that I have. Then I got to play with my dad here. He was my first teammate, my first coach. We played for about 4 years together, up and down the coast of California in novice tournaments and B tournaments and A tournaments. And at some point, we would watch all these great players who played here. As John mentioned, some of the best who were here. We would never play on the court with them, but at some point, I was put into a bit of a quandary, I guess, because somebody else asked me to play. A really good player, local player here named Rich Payne asked me to play. And I was in a huge dilemma because my dad, he's my guy, he's my partner, my coach. What do I do? So I went to consult with my partner, and I could see a lot of dads in this day and age, then and especially now, saying, no, we're going to keep playing together. I taught you everything you know. We need to keep working our way up the circuit. And he just gave me this incredible gift, and he just said, you're getting too good for me. You gotta move on. And so we played. It was the first time. Some people would enter opens because anybody in that day and age could enter an open, and they would enter an open just to say they got hit in the face by Henry Bergman, or they dug Jim Menges, and then they could tell him 20 years later, you remember that time I dug you and almost put the ball away? But we didn't do that, my dad and I. We wanted to enter when we actually had a shot to compete for a tournament. And so this was the first tournament, the Santa Barbara Open, 15 years old, playing with Rich Payne. And we upset one team, and then another, and then another, and all of a sudden we're playing the #1 seed and one of the best teams of all time, Jim Menges and Greg Lee. And I think, again, it was either on this court or this next one. And I'm completely overcome with goosebumps right now because that's the bully dork that I am. I love little things like that. We got to play against and actually compete with and hang with the best team in the world. They went on to win 13 tournaments in a row. It took decades for a team. Finally, Misty May and Kerry Walsh came along and tied and overcame that record of 13 tournaments in a row against the very best who were playing. It was awesome to share a court with them. Another great memory I have is, as John mentioned, we would come down here under any conditions. First of all, everything was a competition. So we would race to see who would be here in the mornings, in the summertime, or after school, who could be here first. That fence over there was where we'd lock our bikes, and then we'd get out here and we'd play all day long. So one of these things that John will always have hanging over me is we wanted to set a record for how many games you could play. And in challenge format, you win, you keep going, but you lose, you got to wait a couple hours. Who could play the most games in a day? The best I ever got was 9. John crushed that record, and he still holds the record between us of 13 straight games won here. Just kicked my butt, so he's always got that hanging over me. But we would come down here, and we were obsessed with this game. So during the afternoon, when the wind came up, or if there were a tournament on, we would, with our obsession, just make up formats to play one-on-one. We invented a kind of volleyball. We called it boxes. And when a tournament was going on and we didn't have a court and a net, we just drew two courts about 30 feet apart from each other, and we would play volleyball without a net. We'd play one-on-one, and whoever won the last game, it was like poker. He'd get to call the rules. Was it one touch, two touch, three touches? Was it deep court? Was it shallow court? Was it underhand only? Was it overhand? Was it sky ball? Was it jump serve? Was it cross court? Was it narrow court? We made up every variation you could possibly come up with. And those memories just live with me until the day I pass away. These are incredible moments. So those are some of the memories I have of us growing up here and being, as we see on this day, I've gotten to play on, and Todd has gotten to play on a lot of beaches all around the world. I have too, been in a lot of gyms around the world. There is no better place to play beach volleyball than right here on this beach with this weather and those mountains and this kind of volleyball community around. So those memories lead me into the second theme that occurs to me, and that is now that I'm coaching with the USA Women, we coaches do lots of reading to try to learn how do we help our team, help our players reach a level of performance the highest that they can possible, higher than they've ever done before. So we read lots of books, and one of them is The Talent Code, which is a study of what as they go around the world and look in these spots, what are the unique things about great performance? And this beach represents all three of those. There are three components to anybody that you follow, a Michael Jordan, or as John mentioned, a Wayne Gretzky, and lots of others. First of all, you need ignition. You need this great passion and a near obsession with the sport. John and I had that. We built that in each other and all of our friends, who were all the same age, as we would spend so much time down here. So A, we had this ignited passion. B, we had a lot of mindful practice. Whether we were playing one-on-one or whether we were John and I were trying to get good enough to even have the nerve to challenge some of the all-time greats on this court. And it took us a long time. This really wasn't my court. As Jerry mentioned, I think probably more appropriate, that court was my court and John's court for a long, long time before we had the nerve to work our way up. But we just over and over tried to figure out ways to do it better. And then third, you need great coaching. And so that's where people like my dad, my first coach, and Rick Olmsted, our coach at Santa Barbara High School, and Al Skates at UCLA, and all the coaches I've had at USA, you put those all three together, and that you have the ingredients, the main ingredients to elite performance. And they're all to be found right here on this court and every one of these courts and in this beach and in this community. So it's awesome. And you can see that it's replicated in somebody like Todd Rogers, another one of the all-time greats in this sport. So there's this mantle and this foundation. Henry Bergman laid the foundation. Other people built on that, and then it's Todd, and hopefully other people come from beyond him. But that makes Santa Barbara a really special place, to be able to provide those kinds of conditions for people to chase their dreams like that. And so ultimately it just leaves me incredibly grateful to my mom and dad and sisters and my wife and our boys, our family and friends, of being so supportive in me getting to do this, to be the architect of my own destiny, and to be still involved in this sport, and to coach even now, and kind of avoid growing up and staying in volleyball.